Saturday Night Live edition of Locked On Warriors. Kylen Mills and yours truly, Cyrus Saatsaz. We're going to recap the Warriors winning a back-to-back in fairly dominant style, but I mean, they got killed in certain facets, Kylen. You were pointing some stuff out before we started recording the show. We're going to address all the chat questions. Yeah, you definitely pointed something out that the Warriors got killed on. We'll bring all that up. Wiggins was efficient and then some. Look, they won. Things are good. Things are good in Warriors land. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. You can follow Kylen Mills on Twitter and Instagram at Kylen Mills, where she has the most amazing dogs ever. You can follow me, Cyrus Saatsaz, on Twitter, Dog Surf Roadshow. Kylen, your first reaction to the Warriors thumping the Houston Rockets in a game that had its moments, especially in the fourth quarter, but they ultimately won 120-101. Your recap and say hello to your pups for me, please, because I love your dogs.
Hold on, let me just unmute myself for a second so you can hear what's happening. And the thing is, I specifically set myself up in the office in the back of our house, like the farthest away from the windows in the front of our house, because we have windows like in our front living room that look out to the street when they start barking and howling. And they still manage to be so loud. Anyways, the dogs are excited. As Darren said in the chat, the dogs are excited as well because the Dubs won. Okay, first of all, that's 10 straight wins for the Warriors at home. So plenty to be excited about when it comes to the way they're playing at Chase Center. The Warriors are certainly dominant in their home court. First, we've got to talk about who you talked about. Andrew Wiggins just looked absolutely fantastic tonight on a night that Klay Thompson took the night off on the second half of a back-to-back. We see players around him instead getting more touches, and Andrew Wiggins is one of those players who made the most of it. And I thought it was interesting because Andrew Wiggins, to me, is a player who's at his best when he's getting out in transition, then also getting to the rim. But instead, today, he was dominant from beyond the arc. I mean, my goodness. Also, I just read a stat that apparently Steph Curry and Andrew Wiggins are the first two set of teammates, or no, the third ever set of teammates to hit 8 3-pointers in a game. How freaking cool. So that was just like Wiggins was in his bag tonight. Like it was just wild because yes, he's like a solid 3-point shooter, but he's not a guy who I think is at his best taking a high volume of threes. But hey, if they're falling, why not keep firing? So that was super encouraging to see from him. Another player who looked to me like he was in his bag tonight was Jordan Poole. I stand by what I tweeted out, which is that Jordan Poole is at his best when he's not being forced to run the offense. And that's what he has to do in that second unit. And not to say that he doesn't facilitate at all, but I think he just is so much better when he has Draymond Green on the floor running the offense as well as Steph Curry. Obviously, Steph Curry has the gravity of Steph Curry, and he draws defenders to him, which allows the players around him in general to get more open looks. But I just think that Jordan Poole has been hampered this season by the extra pressure in the second unit of having to run the offense, especially in a unit where there isn't anyone else consistently scoring. I feel like that's where we see Jordan Poole sometimes doing too much when he's running the floor and he's running the offense with that second unit. Sometimes I'm like, man, why are you forcing shots? Why are you dribbling so much? But I just think he's so much better and so much more comfortable when he knows he doesn't have that extra burden. And to me, he just looked totally confident, totally comfortable tonight, took the right shots. He stayed pretty patient. I liked what I saw from Jordan Poole. And I just think he's so much better when he's playing with Steph and Draymond. Those are my two biggest takeaways, and I have more that I'm sure we'll get into soon.
No, but I haven't really put much thought into that until you raised this topic right now in terms of Jordan Poole basically not having the responsibility of being, the quote unquote point guard on the floor, the facilitator, and instead taking on more of a shooting guard role where his job is more so to score and not to necessarily make his teammates better. That's a great point. I mean, the evidence substantiates it. So I'm with you. That's yeah. And then Wiggins, clearly, just to follow up on that, he was interviewed at halftime, and Fitz and Azubuike asked him, like, what's changed with you in terms of your 3-point shooting? Because you mentioned, for example, Steph and Wiggins both hit 8 or more 3-point shots in the same game. I think that was the first time ever by two Warriors players. And I think, as you mentioned, the third time ever that's happened, which is startling. Yeah. And so Wiggins for the game he scored 36, 8 for 10 from 3, 14 of 19 from the field, had 5 rebounds, 2 steals, only 1 turnover, 1 block, only got called for 1 foul. That is about as efficient of a game as you can find. And in that halftime interview, when they asked him, like, how did your 3-point shooting get so much better? And he looks good too when he shoots it, right? Like the flick of the wrist, the form, the stroke, everything just looks so damn good. He said it was just reps. It's just he came to a team where they wanted him to shoot threes, and he just kept putting those shots up. Reps make you better, and that's a huge reason why I personally been advocating for Kuminga to get minutes. And then when we saw tonight from Moody, we'll touch on that in just a second. I think it's time for Moody to get some more minutes as well. You brought up something very interesting in addition to what you just said right now, which was all awesome. I totally agree with you. And you brought up before we started recording points in the paint, which was a weakness tonight. I mean, this game should have been a blowout from beginning to end, but there was a moment in that fourth quarter where I think the Warriors were only leading by 4, maybe 3. And the points in the paint were a huge liability, a huge weakness for the Warriors tonight. If you don't mind expanding on that, like, why do you think the Warriors got killed in that department? And I think it was 72-34 is where they got outscored in points in the paint. Like, what happened there? What do you think is the reason for that?
That's crazy. And I just that was one of the main things that just came to mind before I'd seen the numbers, was just the eye test. Like, it just seemed like they were getting beat up inside. And I just checked as well. They also got beat up when it comes to offensive boards. Houston collected 14 while the Warriors had 6. What was it? I don't know. The Warriors are not the biggest team in the NBA, and we know that. I still think they could use another big or potentially a center to go along with their second unit. And that's part of the issue, I think, is just roster construction, size. But when you are an undersized team going up against some bigger players, the Warriors just have to be really disciplined when it comes to boxing out and getting to their spots and really trying to run down rebounds, because that was an area to me that I felt like they were really struggling, was rebounding, which a lot of times in turn results in points in the paint. But in general, I feel like the Warriors could use another big, especially with that second unit.
I agree with you, because tonight, they got killed in the paint. Obviously, we mentioned that just a moment ago. 72-34 in terms of the difference between the Rockets' points in the paint and the Warriors. They got killed on the glass, 45-35. The Rockets got 14 offensive rebounds to only 6 for the Warriors. Look, the Warriors won this game tonight. They're now 2 games above 500. They're a staggering 11-1 at home. So I'm going to try to not be negative, given they won this game on 19 points and they're on the right track. But there's so much room still for improvement. And when you bring up the Warriors needing a big, I wholeheartedly agree with you. And again, I hate the fact that my criticism of Anthony Lamb comes off as me being a hater on him. I don't hate the guy. I don't mind him being on the team, but I don't like a lineup that I saw out there. And this was in the early part of the fourth quarter, I think, where Draymond Green was on the floor, where Jonathan Kuminga was on the floor, and Anthony Lamb was on the floor. And when you have those 3 players on the floor together, you're basically saying Jonathan Kuminga is now your 3, right? And either Draymond or Anthony Lamb is your 4 or 5. And that is where I feel like a Dwight Howard would be such an upgrade over what the Warriors currently have with Anthony Lamb right now. I think if the Warriors had Dwight Howard, so many of the issues would be gone. They would have defense. They would have size. I mean, no offense to Lamb, but he's 6'5" out there, and he had a horrible game tonight. He committed 5 fouls in 15 minutes. He had 0 points, 0 rebounds. He was a blatant liability. I'm with you. I do not understand why the Warriors are not using that extra roster spot, unless they think James Wiseman is, the answer to that, and they're going to call him back up. Like, what do you think? Like, do you think Wiseman is in the future? Do you think? I don't know.
I still don't think James Wiseman's ready. And I question whether or not he will be ready this season. That's okay. I'm not trying to knock James Wiseman. He didn't play a lot of basketball coming into his NBA career, 3 games in college. He was limited to just over 30 games his rookie season due to injuries. And then he's been injured the last couple of years. So I just want to be clear that I'm not saying that as a knock on James Wiseman, but he may need the rest of the season to really develop before he's ready to be a role player. Some people don't think he'll ever get there to be a role player. I still see the potential and see some of the physical gifts that it takes to be a success in the NBA, but he may just be a project who needs more and more time. I just don't feel comfortable, like personally, in my opinion, of saying that he's absolutely going to be a reliable piece and contributing to this second unit come the playoffs. Like, I don't know that he'll be ready. He may just need more time. And Steve Kerr keeps hammering that about how the young players need more time and not to rush them and put so much pressure on some of these young guys. But at the same time, the Warriors can't put him in a position where they need him to be contributing majorly with that second unit. Like, they can't put him in that spot to fail, to me, James Wiseman, if he's not ready yet. And that's where I think an experienced big could absolutely be an asset to this team. I just was looking at, like, for example, the second unit only pulled in, of all the substitutions made, 7 rebounds. And there wasn't really anyone who was dominating down low. JaMychal Green pulled in 3. Jonathan Kuminga, who's playing down low, pulled in 1 board. And, I just think they could definitely use a big body and an experienced big body versus a James Wiseman in that second unit.
Absolutely. No, I'm totally with you. And again, I'm sorry Lamb scored 2 points. He had a garbage time basket at the end of the game. Here's what I don't get. And there's a lot of people, Anthony Lamb has become a little polarizing. And I asked this to all the people in the chat who defend him. Like Solomon's Tech, for example, says, there goes Cyrus again. Why do you folks defend him so much? What is it about him that you folks like why, like Moses Moody and Jonathan Kuminga were members of a world championship team last year. They were a part of this club. They were drafted by this club. Anthony Lamb was non-existent to all of you until he got added last minute after training camp ended as a two-way player. No one was even talking about him back then. Is it just because Steve Kerr is playing him? Is it just that whatever Kerr does, like you just instantly fall in line and agree to it? I don't. Anthony Lamb, I cringe now. At this point, when I see him playing in these games, I cringe because Anthony Lamb, if he's going to be playing significant minutes for this team in March, April, they're not going to win a world championship, folks. I will put anything down to back my claim up on that. I'm not trying to hate on him. It's just if the Warriors are going to win a repeat world championship, Anthony Lamb is not the answer. I'm sorry. Your dogs are so adorable, by the way. I love seeing them. Look, Moses Moody had a great game, by the way. We'll touch on that. Jordan Poole, you mentioned, had a great game. We'll touch on that in just a minute. And real quick here, I'm not gonna hide. Deluser Gills, why do you cringe when I talk about Lamb? Why? I wish I could answer a call here, but you can't communicate. Why do you defend him so much? He had 2 points, 0 rebounds, committed 5 fouls in 15 minutes. Most games he plays, he sucks. Okay, he's had a few good games. All right, he had a stretch of 4 games earlier this season where he had 4 points. Why are you defending him? And Nadir, for example, writes, like he's a smart guy. How do you know that? What are you basing that on? Because Kerr's giving him minutes? What? I don't get it. I do not understand this endless defense of Anthony Lamb. Why do you love him? Just someone I don't get it. I really think the only thing I keep falling back on is that Kerr plays him, and so people just fall in line behind Kerr because look, Kerr has clearly earned a considerable benefit of the doubt as the head coach of this team for this dynasty. But again, Nadish, what are you watching? He had 5 fouls in 15 minutes. He had 2 points in garbage time, no rebounds. Why are you defending him? He is not a good player. He is average at best. He might be a better shooter than JaMychal Green, but that's not saying much. He wasn't a good shooter tonight. And at 6'5", he is not a good rebounder. He is not a good defender. He's oftentimes just standing around. It drives me crazy. Maybe what Traveling Urquidis says is true that, hold on, where is it right here? It's because he does what he needs to do. But again, that's not enough. And Ty Berkeley, you write, Kerr explained it thoroughly the other day. I saw that explanation. All he said was that he's a hard worker who's at the right place at the right time. I'm all about results, folks. I want to see results on that court. He doesn't produce results, okay? I want stats and I want wins. That's what I look for. He doesn't produce stats, and he's not the reason why the Warriors win games, folks, all right? Moses Moody is far superior to him. Jonathan Kuminga is far superior to him. And I don't know. It just drives me crazy when I keep seeing Anthony Lamb. My uncle is at my house tonight. I love him. I love he's one of the most intelligent people I know. And he doesn't watch every Warriors game, right? So we were watching the game together tonight, and he just kept going, who is this guy? Like, he didn't even know Anthony Lamb's name, right? And I had to explain it to him. He goes, why is he playing out here? Who is this clown? And I'm not going to call Lamb a clown, but I'm just going like, I don't know. I could not defend it. All I could keep saying was Kerr, for some reason, loves this guy because he has a few more years experience than the rookies, and he keeps playing. And I don't understand it. But sorry, Kylen, to take up all the time there
No,
with the
can I
tangent.
interject a little bit about Anthony
Please,
Lamb? Because
please.
I'm chuckling and I just love your passion for this topic, Cyrus, and it does crack me up a little bit. I don't disagree with you in regards to playing some of the young players over Anthony Lamb because I think Moses Moody and Jonathan Kuminga have higher ceilings than Anthony Lamb. I don't think that consistently on a night-to-night basis, they've yet proven to Steve Kerr that they are better than him. And I think that's the reason why Kerr has turned to Anthony Lamb in certain games earlier in the season. However, we saw Lamb was definitely not great tonight, but he can be effective when he shoots the three ball. And he is shooting but beyond the three-point line at a 45% rate, 45.8% in the last 10 games, more than 55% from the floor. So I think he can be a value when he's able to hit some of those outside shots. And I do think he works hard. You see him make some of the hustle plays. That's where I think you get some of the, viewers and people are commenting here saying that he's always ready. He makes smart plays. He knows where to go in rotations, which is what Steve Kerr has emphasized as well. When you add all that together with him being able to hit a couple of big shots, a couple of threes, when he's able to drop a couple in, then suddenly his value increases and his plus minus increases as well. When he doesn't make a shot and he's not hitting anything, I understand what you're saying. And just being a smart player isn't enough to warrant getting time on the floor. And I also understand your point in that it's not warranting him playing over some of the Warriors' first round picks. So I see a little bit of both sides, but I do think that there can be value when Lamb is hitting shots. And the problem is that when he doesn't hit shots, he's, not positively contributing to the game enough for him to warrant being played over some of these other players. I think that Moses Moody, if we want to talk about that a little bit, I know you want to touch on that. We saw what his potential can be tonight as a 3-and-D player. And I love what we saw from him if he can start consistently bringing that every single night.
And I'll answer that in just a minute because we're running late on a sponsor read here. We'll touch on all that and so much more. First, I could give some love to a MasterClass, which is, in my opinion, if you want to learn something, why not learn from the best, right? And that's what MasterClass does. Whether you want to learn about cooking, whether you want to learn about music, whether you want to learn about acting, business negotiations, songwriting, how to think like an FBI profiler, whatever your passion is, whatever your interest is, MasterClass is for you. And some other Locked On hosts were actually given an opportunity to take some master classes and get a firsthand experience, and they loved it. They compared it to a college course, only the teacher is, literally one of the best at what they do. And some of the teachers, for example, include John Legend, musician, Mariah Carey, another musician, Bob Iger, who I think was the CEO of Disney again, Gordon Ramsay, if you want to learn about cooking, Steve Martin, one of my favorite human beings on the planet, if you want to learn about music. It's phenomenal. And MasterClass, of course, is a sponsor of this program. And sign up. It's fun. You can learn from the best. I think all you got to do is just go to masterclass.com/lockedon today to check it out. And for this holiday, it's a phenomenal gift. That's masterclass.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. Once you're done with us, check out Locked On Sports today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow Kylen Mills on Twitter and Instagram at Kylen Mills. Just real quick, I just want to add on to this. The Anthony Lamb shooting 45% from three is awesome. But, and I haven't done the math here, I'm going to have to go back and do this. He went, I think, in his second game, 6 for 7 from three, which just skyrocketed that percentage. I'm very curious to see if you take out that one game, what his percentage is. And then someone wrote here, like, why do you give Moses Moody and other players a pass? I think Solomon's Tech is the one who's picking a fight with me on this, and that's fine. That's fair. Moses Moody, to me, is someone that needs patience. It's only his second year. He's 20 years old. He's a lottery pick. He was a lottery pick for a good reason, in the same way that Anthony Lamb was not drafted for a good reason. So I'm preaching patience when it comes to 20-year-old lottery picks, who, by the way, was in one of the deepest drafts in NBA history. But it's just look, Moses Moody to me is a better player. Jonathan Kuminga is a better player, and I just want to play the better player. That's it. I will move on from the topic now. I'm done, unless anyone else wants to continue on. Jordan Poole, what do you think of his performance tonight, by the way?
Sorry, can I go back to the Moody topic?
Go back, please. Yes.
Someone made a good point in the chat. I'm going to play devil's advocate for you, Cyrus, because I think when Steve Kerr has turned, in times that he's turned to Anthony Lamb, is because the young players have been inconsistent. And someone mentioned the out of control fouling we've seen at times from Moses Moody and Jonathan Kuminga, where they weren't playing disciplined defense. And I do think that Steve Kerr sees Anthony Lamb as a guy, when he puts him out there on the floor, he knows what he's going to get from him. And he is a smart player, and he knows he can at least shore up some things in the defensive front. Someone, I think maybe it was Wayne in the chat, mentioned that he's good at stopping straight line drives. Again, he's just a little bit smarter and a little bit more ready than some of those young players who are still, I don't want to say wild cards in regards to Moses Moody and Jonathan Kuminga, but that is what comes to mind, just because they're not consistent yet. They're not consistently playing at the level that Steve Kerr wants them to play at to be regular contributors. So I think that that's where he's found that he's been able to turn to Anthony Lamb as a guy he can rely on to, accomplish some of those different things he wants to get done, especially defensively, because this team has scores, and defense is an area where they've been struggling this season. And not to say he's outstanding, but again, you just got to figure a smart player, a guy who gets to the right spots and, has been able to be consistent without getting crazy with fouling. And so I don't think that necessarily means that he deserves to play over Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody all season long. I get what you're saying. I want to see those two really have more time on the floor so that they can develop. But that to me is most likely why the staff has at certain times turned to Anthony Lamb when those young players have been looking inconsistent. Tonight, though, Moses Moody, I thought, had great shot selection, knocked down the shots, a couple of big shots when he needed to, especially with under 5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. I think it was a 6-point game or 7-point game when he hit a three when the Warriors desperately needed it. But he's got to bring that consistently every single night. And then the same thing with Jonathan Kuminga, quiet night from him. So once again, these guys, they've just got to bring that high level consistently so that Steve Kerr can start to trust them to be the go-to guys in the rotation. But sorry, now we can move on to Jordan Poole, unless you want to add something to that.
Well, and I got to do another ad read here, but I don't understand the smart player compliment. That's a subjective thing. I haven't seen anything that indicates he's like this quote unquote intelligent player. I mean, he knows where to be at the right time. I don't know if that suddenly makes him some genius. I haven't seen consistency. Like tonight, for example, again, he had a horrible night. Horrible. He had 5,000.
I think he's been inconsistent shooting. He's been inconsistent shooting. So that's you're absolutely right on that. And I just think in regards to defensively is more what I was thinking of.
And even defensively, like I was watching tonight, and people are blowing by him now. Like I'm not even impressed by him defensively in all honesty. And on nights when other players are putting up bigger players out there in the low post, Lamb is so short, they just shoot right over him. I don't get it. And somebody asked right here earlier in the thing, and I love these disrespectful comments of, well, there's a reason why Kerr's the coach and you're not. I mean, look, if you want to talk about the eye test, wasn't the right one, whatever. But someone said but he passes the eye test. Agree to disagree on that. Look, if you want to talk about the eye test, he wasn't drafted at all. There's a reason for that. Okay, he's been cut by 2 teams in 2 years and was signed as a 2-way player. There's a reason for that. Okay. So, and again, Tony, and I'm not hating on Lamb. I'm hating more so if you're going to call me a hater, I'm hating more so on Kerr for continually not putting faith in these young players that have much more talent than Anthony Lamb. And when the Warriors in their second unit have lineups that include Draymond Green and Jonathan Kuminga, then I don't think Lamb is needed at all. That's where I think Moses Moody can slide in and play the 3, because you have Kuminga and Draymond Green handling the front line. So I just, bottom line is, to me, and I believe strongly in this, the Warriors are simply a better team when Moses Moody or Jonathan Kuminga plays over Anthony Lamb. And don't worry, everyone, I'm that's all I'm saying. That is all I'm saying. Okay, it's just the Warriors are a better team when Moses Moody and Jonathan Kuminga gets minutes over Anthony Lamb. All right. These are 2 rookies who were starting playoff games last year in a world championship run. Like that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. I got to give some love to, and again, the other side of it is, like, for example, like this comment right here from LR, and this could be a comment we talk about all night, but we don't have time for that. LR says, you're missing things got to happen now. Otherwise, Warriors might miss the boat this year. That's why Lamb is playing. That's where you and I are on a very different page. If Lamb is a heavy minutes guy in March, April, the Warriors do not win a world championship this year. Plain and simple. That bench is not deep enough to survive 4 rounds in the playoffs if Anthony Lamb is out there getting 15, 20 minutes a night instead of Jonathan Kuminga or Moses Moody. I believe wholeheartedly in that. He's just not a good enough player. When I see Anthony Lamb, I think Juan Toscano-Anderson. Maybe a great bench player. He might give you a good 5, 10, 15 minutes here and there. But to rely on him to win a championship, you're out of your mind if you think that Anthony Lamb is your salve. Moses Moody and Jonathan Kuminga have already proven they can play on a world championship team. They weren't getting heavy minutes last year. They're going to have to get it this year. And the Warriors made that decision with this roster that, hey, we got young players. They're really good. Let's play them. This is the decision they made. They let Gary Payton II go. They let Otto Porter Jr. go for this reason. And clearly there's a divide between Kerr and Lacob in terms of what the future and the present holds, right? Lacob wants his lottery picks playing. Kerr doesn't. And that's a weird dichotomy by itself. But I just don't think Lamb is better than Moody or Kuminga. That's it. And I'm going to disagree with Kerr on that. So, Jesus.
So some people are pointing out in the chat, Cyrus, that when some of these young players were getting bigger minutes earlier in the season, that the Warriors were 3-7, 3-8. They were losing games. So are you okay with losing games if the young players are struggling?
I'm going to hit the brakes on that because Kuminga was not getting big minutes when they were losing those games. Lamb was. Moody wasn't playing at all. People have forgotten that Jonathan Kuminga had 5 DNPs, I think, in the first 10 games. It was all.
Yeah, he got out of the rotation like 2 games in. I agree.
But Lamb is like, and Moody's been getting DNP'd endlessly, No, Michael Kiko, I'm sorry, I don't agree with you. Kuminga has proven something. Kuminga's been proving it endlessly. When Kuminga plays, good things happen. Good things happen. They're like the only stat that you could pull against Kuminga and maybe Moody is plus minus. All right. And which is a very subjective stat. You can cherry pick that thing. But when it comes to shooting percentages, when it comes to wins and losses, which is the most important thing, Kuminga and Moody have already proven they're winners. So, and again, toast to GOAT, you don't need Moody to play the 4. Play him at the 3. You have Kuminga and Draymond Green out there as your front court. And no cap, I don't agree with you. Kuminga is going to be a superstar in this game. I do not understand why people are hating on no, Nadish. Nope. Nadish is writing.
So regardless of whether it was happening earlier in the season, let's say the Warriors are losing by playing Moody and Kuminga. Like, are you advocating for playing them even if they aren't necessarily ready and they aren't bringing that consistency night in and night out, and it could potentially hurt the team? Are you okay with that in favor of their development, or where do you draw that line? Because I think that's the challenge the Warriors are faced with right now.
The Warriors were a below 500 team when they weren't playing Kuminga. Like, everything started switching largely because Kuminga started getting more minutes because he's a 6'8" athletic freak out there. So I don't think that will happen. If Kerr actually did that, if Kerr decided, okay, Cyrus, I'm going to listen to you and I'm going to start playing Kuminga and Moody 20, 25 minutes a night. I'm going to leave Lamb on the bench where he belongs. I'm going to leave Ty Jerome on the bench where he belongs. The Warriors are going to win games. I guarantee it. And I say that largely because, again, Moses Moody was starting Western Conference Finals games for a reason. Jonathan Kuminga was starting Western Conference semifinal games for a reason. Both these players were lottery picks in arguably the deepest draft in NBA history for a reason. Yes, Jay, who writes, isn't Kuminga getting more minutes now? Yes. And notice how the Warriors are now 2 games above 500, swinging up. Moses Moody actually got a chance tonight to play. I think he was perfect from beyond the arc, 3 for 3, scored 11 points. He had a great game. Anthony Lamb he's just an average Joe. And I don't understand why they keep playing him. That's all. This has taken up a lot of time. I
love the engagement, though. Shout out to Carla in the chat. We got another female, and I just want to say, keep it up, baby.
Hell yeah. And Tony Smith, look, I don't subscribe to popularity contests. All right. I don't. Just because the majority, First of all, I don't know if the majority, if you took a poll, will say Anthony Lamb is better than Moses Moody. But even if that was the case, I'm sorry, man. I'm not a popularity contest guy. I don't think the majority is right all the time. That's just certainly not something I'm going to subscribe to. Anyways, let's do this. Let's make this a 2-round show. Are you cool with that?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So round 2 coming up next for those watching the recorded version. Otherwise, we'll keep this thing rolling. This is Locked On Warriors.